Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, in the current session, we would focus on the temperament of 18th century. I hope and expect that by the end of this session, you would be able to understand what was the social temper during the 18th century and how it is connected to the modern English. Well, my dear students, the first half of the 18th century is commonly designated to what we call in literature Augustan Age in England. The characteristics or the principal features of this age started showing themselves. They were quite prominent even at the outset of the century. And they maintained their influence through the century. However, there were a couple of radical changes that happened during the last 2 decades of this century. My dear students, actually the 17th century had certain influences on language, and at the outset of 18th century we would see that the users of language, they tried to retain those best features that they had in 17th century. The special feature was of rational language, the language choices made on rational basis, and it was tried to be retained. This period, that is the 18th century period, it can be known as, a period for, the desire for or the search for stability. A strong sense of order prevailed everywhere. It's very natural. When you compare it back in the history, the immediate past, that is the Renaissance time, you would see that was a time of enthusiasm. Well, enthusiasm comes with emotions. It comes with freedom. It comes with lack of, interest in rules. It comes with breaking the rules. Now, all this happened so much that to balance it out, naturally a reaction happened, and the reaction was now the desire to bring order, the desire to have control over things, the desire to give a structure to language. So actually all this adventurous individualism that was a part of the Renaissance period is now being replaced with, a kind of collective consciousness during this period. And of course, there was a strong desire for a system in language. Conformity to standard that the consensus recognizes as good. This is what we can call the second feature of these times. Any of the, rules or any of the choices on language based matters would not depend on the individual. They would rather depend upon conformity of the standards done through the public opinion, done through a consensus, where everybody would agree that would be the rule. It's not that I want to do this and I want to do this and X wants to do this and Y wants to do this and Z wants to do this. No, a collective consensus on all the choices, and then that to be followed. Correctness was desired for as an ideal. Attempts were made to formulate rules to define this kind of perfection, the ideal that they wanted to achieve. What was done for that? They made rules so that that ideal of perfection could be achieved. In fact, this is the time when satisfaction in things meant things following the logical, explanation. Everything would be looked through the lens of rationality, reason, and logic. But the powerful new current of scientific rationalism did not sweep away firmly grounded reverence of the classical literature. So, it does not mean at all that classic literature was thrown out of the window. It had its own place. And how it had its own place, the most important feature of, that was taken from these classics was that Latin language was taken kind of as a model, as a framework within which efforts would be made to fit English language. Overall, what I would say is that the desire for perfection was the main characteristic of the temper of the 18th century.